Magic is glad to have you on this webinar on product design, the differentiator. We are here with Magic team over here, along with the industry leader and expert board of director, HGSS Nanded team, and the core team. Hey, hi, I am Yogesh Taude, and I will be the drivers for today's session. This webinar is organized by Magic in collaboration with SGSS Nanded.
Welcome, Mr. Ashish. I'm Suhas Gazre here from SGGS IIT Nanded.
Hello, Suhas.
How are you, sir?
Good to connect with you on this online platform.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much for your acceptance.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Always my pleasure. To spread the world of design is something I love to do. And if there is an opportunity, I don't miss that.
So Rohit and Kshitij are taking a lot of efforts to connect to different speakers and different.
Yes, yes. I think it's a very good initiative. This Learn Next series, which has been started.
Yes, yes.
I would love to see this really going across
Yes.
and helping, especially the young students, young entrepreneurs, people who are starting on their careers. I think this is really going to make a lot of difference.
This is our third program in collaboration with Magic.
Okay.
We conducted 2 Atal FDPs of 1 week each on enabling startup and entrepreneurship mindset for faculty and around 200 faculty across India attended that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you're saying this is cross India, which happened?
Across India, yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. Kshitij, you can take over.
We will wait more 2 to 3 minutes. Ashish Gade from Magic is joining. Just
Okay.
give him 2 minutes.
Okay.
Great.
I can see Ashish Garde on the. He's already joined.
Hey, that's great. So let's begin with the session. Magic is glad to have you on this webinar on product design, the differentiator. We are here with Magic team over here, along with the industry leader and expert board of director, HGSS Nanded team, and the core team. Hey, hi, I am Yogesh Taude, and I will be the drivers for today's session. This webinar is organized by Magic in collaboration with SGSS Nanded. So I would love to call Ashish Garde sir to give a brief about Magic. Over to you, sir. Sir, please unmute yourself. Ashish, sir.
We can start with SGGS first, then we can come back.
Okay, Kshitij, that can also work. Now, we also have here Suhas Gazre sir, Dean of Incubation from SGSS Nanded, to brief us about the SGSS Nanded. Over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Yogesh. Let me share a very brief presentation which I have made. So, is it visible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I will not take much of everybody's time. Our institute is established in 1981 and it is 100% government-aided autonomous institute, IICT approved and affiliated to SRT MU Nanded. And to tell more about this, we have 10 UG and 10 PG courses, BTech and MTech respectively, plus PhD. The highlight of our institute is we are having almost 55 plus faculty members with PhD, and we have a lot of facilities such as Center of Excellence in Signal and Image Processing, Industrial Robotics Training Center. The recent achievements are not recent exactly, but the first achievement which I have mentioned here is that we are one of the 4 institutes in Maharashtra who were granted autonomy in 2004. The other 3 were ICT Mumbai, COE Pune, and VJTI Mumbai. Recently, in 2020, government has announced ARIA ranking, and we are 4th in all India in ARIA 2020 in government and government aided category. Recently, we are selected to establish prestigious AICTE IDEA Lab, which is ideation, development, evaluation, and application, which is a 1.1 crore project, and 55 lakhs is given by AICTE, and 55 lakhs we are sharing from our funds. It's very great to tell everybody is that we are only one amongst 49 institutes in India, one amongst 5 institutes in Maharashtra, and only institute from Marathwada and Vidarbha for this establishing of IDEA Lab. We also have many awards and winners from different categories for faculty and students, such as Smart India Hackathons, BAHA. We have won 2 back-to-back AICTE Best Teacher Awards, Vishweshwara Awards, last year and the year before that. Then Best Institute, Best Principal in the University, Best Teacher in the University, GATE AIR1, etc. There are many things to our credit. Just because this will be beamed live everywhere, this is a brief introduction of our campus and what facilities we are having, where is Nanded, about Nanded. I am not going to read everything here. About institutions, innovation ecosystem, we have Engineering Exploration Laboratory, Innovation Laboratory, then Industrial Robotics Training Center, Center of Excellence, SAI Technology Cyber Security Center, then Center for Realistic Design and Verification supported by Mentor, and Endres and Hauser supported laboratory, Immersion supported laboratory, Technology Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell, Robotics for Next Generation Group, and Institutes Innovation Council. Just a very brief, photograph, because a picture is worth thousands of words. So this is Engineering Exploration Laboratory. This is Innovation Laboratory and Technology Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell. This is Industrial Robotics Training Center. I will just take half a minute here. This is very recently we have done in collaboration with DPC of District Collectorate, and around 6 industrial robots we have installed. Unfortunately, the installation of all those robots were in the COVID era, so technically we have not started training and other things related to this this particular robotic center. But we will be very happy to connect with MAGIC and CMIA and industrial associations with Aurangabad and around. If they can use our lab for any purpose, we are open for that. Then we have a lot of centers of excellence, such as Signal and image processing, cyber security, VLSI design, etc. And in the instrumentation side also, we have Indus Plus Hauser laboratory, etc. Finally, I would like to tell a quote here, one quote from Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam from Wings of Fire, that technology, unlike science, is a group activity. It is not based on individual intelligence, but on the interaction of many people. So with this, I hand over the session again to Mr. Yogesh. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, sir. That was really a great presentation.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to call Rohit Auti, CEO of MAGIC, to introduce MAGIC as well as give the brief about the program. Over to you, Rohit.
Thanks, Yogesh. Mr. Ashish Deshpande, great to meet you in person. Many years back, when I think I was very young, I probably even applied to Elephant Design.
Don't tell
Because
me.
at that time I was very passionate about product design, and I thought I'll try it out. I used to stay like 2 blocks near your office in Pune. So I always used to look at what you guys are doing. I also knew some people at Elephant Design, and I even tried to apply, but I got a very polite message then that, you know what, we don't have a position right now.
Okay. I was just wondering. I hope you got a polite message. Very glad that serendipity kind of brings us, together on this platform. So happy to connect in this way.
So I'll just give a quick background of MAGIC. Like Suhas sir said, that SGGS IIT was founded in 1981. So if you add 1 to the first 2 digits and flip the last 2 digits, that is when we were founded. So we were founded in 2018. So we are technically 3-year-old company. From an operational perspective, we have been active since 2015 via the CMI. So everyone who is on the board of Magic actually are prior presidents of the CMI. So basically, the concept of Magic was born with an idea that running one-off programs or ad hoc programs to drive innovation and entrepreneurship is not enough to make something happen tangibly in our region. So the then presidents and vice presidents and secretaries, one of them was Mr. Ashish Garde, who is on the call today. They came together with a thought that, you know what, let's create a permanent platform to drive all these initiatives. And this started very small in 2015. And the team started interacting with youth, with students to understand what they're doing, how we can encourage people to become job creators versus job seekers. So that was the mission. And with a very humble beginning, in a single room, we started interacting with innovators, farmers, young people who were not educated at all. So the message was that if you have an idea, come to us and we'll figure out how that can be built. The guys who were involved in putting Magic together, they not only invested money, but they also invested time, and they provided all their industry access to the new upcoming innovators. So if somebody wanted any manufacturing support, somebody needed fabrication support, somebody needed to do something on plastic molding, and so on and so forth, across at least 12 industry sectors. So the founding members of Magic used to support them. And then in 2018, a Section 8 not-for-profit company was formed. Till date, Magic has engaged with more than 4,000 students, faculty, startups and innovators from across India. We have incubated around 30 startups till date. We will be onboarding 10 more startups in the upcoming month. The startups that have worked with us so far, especially those that have moved into the revenue stage, they have created more than 50 jobs. We are also fortunate to have a very diverse ecosystem partnership with eminent institutions like SGGS IT. So, and a unique thing about Magic is India's first regional industry association-led incubator and accelerator. So if you see, all the incubators and accelerators resides in academic institutions. So they have that academic flavor to it. They get a lot of benefit because of that, to be honest with you. Sometimes I feel I should have been part of that incubator. But while this is a difficult path, this brings a lot of practical real world value to startups. And that is one of the reasons why 40% of the startups that are now working with us, they are from outside Maharashtra, from across India. And from among the startups that we have been supporting, while they are not incubating with us, purely on a pro bono basis, they are like more than 100, and all of them are from across India. So we are trying to do some good work, and one of our very, very senior directors last month recommended that product design is something you should focus on. And he also pinpointed that the directors of Nirlep, Shri Mukund Bhogle, knows a very pioneer person known as Ashish Deshpande. So you guys should reach out to him and bring him on board. And that is why Kshitij and I have been chasing you to have this session, because I feel this probably is one of the neglected parts. It comes in play at a very later stage. And while it may not have, while it doesn't need to happen immediately in the beginning, in the ideation or the prototyping stage, probably it should stay in the back of the mind of the innovator that, you know what, end of the day, my design or my UI or my UX has to be in such a way that it attracts, it engages the user. So thanks, Suhas sir, for having me here. Thanks, Kshitij and Yogesh, to make this happen. and Ashish Deshpande Sahib to join. So without much ado, I'll hand over to Ashish sir to get into the meat. That is what everyone is waiting for.
Thank you so much. So if you would just kindly allow me to share my screen. So I'm just going
Sir,
to...
I would introduce you first.
Okay, up to you.
Thank you.
I thought...
Thank you.
Though I do have a brief introduction about myself. So
I have prepared, sir.
No problem.
So let me present. Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Yes. So I have a great privilege and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Mr. Ashish Deshpande. He is a director of Elephant Design Pune, one of the leading design company in India. An industrial designer from NID, which is National Institute of Design, Ahmedabad. Ashish started his design entrepreneurship journey almost 30 plus years ago, 32 years to be specific, by co-founding India's pioneering design practice, which is Elephant. And Elephant is today present in India as well as in Singapore. Ashish leads product and retail experience innovation group and has led projects ranging from consumer appliances, air, water, energy, medical equipment, wearable electronics, automotive, retail. So his range is quite exhaustive, and we are very happy to be here. He has also served as appointed member of India Design Council and was invited to be part of several national and international design juries. One of the highlights of his career is that he was asked to join the board of directors of a public listed company and also serves as a certified independent director. And there is nothing, I mean, if this is the career which he is having 30 plus years, he regularly conducts seminars, talks, workshops, and specifically focused on design thinking, which is a game-changing area actually, growth through design, and has taken full credit course also at Flame University based in design thinking. As a designer, Ashish believes that design is an attitude. And believe me, Ashish sir, when I read this for the first time, that design is an attitude, I got reminded of one of my courses which I attended at IDDC, IIT Delhi, one course on product design. Although I am from electronics engineering and was doing PhD at IIT Delhi, but the professor there also has said this statement: design is an attitude. So I got reminded of that particular 1 week workshop. So Ashish's philosophy revolves around build that is simple, usable, and accessible for the most, and he brings ROI to the stakeholders. So without further ado, I welcome Ashish Deshpande for a webinar, Magic Learn Next webinar on product design, the differentiator. The stage is yours, sir.
Thank you, Suhas sir, for that kind introduction. Let me begin by getting the sharing out of the way.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Okay, just let me know once you can see the screen. Are you able to see a screen?
Not yet. Yes.
Yeah, if my name is visible, then
yes,
we are good to go.
Can you maximize the screen, sir? You can press F5 if you are using Windows.
So I have maximized it at my end.
No, I think you have shared the PowerPoint presentation application. Instead of that, you can share the presentation mode of PowerPoint. You just unshare this.
Yeah, I've done that. Now, in fact, I'm not. Yeah. So you want me to go to presentation mode? But
view. from beginning.
No, it is in view mode.
Sorry,
Slideshow.
presentation.
Yeah, slideshow, and you want me to go to
Yes,
presenters
from
view.
beginning, yeah.
Yeah, that will not work. Just let me know if it is working.
You can just even go at the bottom and click the icon.
Yeah, that's what I was doing. That's exactly what I was doing. This won't work. Exactly, I'll do that. Yeah. So, is my screen now visible? If you can read my name in the center, then it's good to go.
No, we are looking at the PowerPoint presentation right now, sir. You just unshare this complete thing.
Okay.
Stop sharing.
Yeah, let me do it again.
Now you can do two things. You just start your PowerPoint presentation in the presentation mode. Are you using Windows?
Yeah, I'm using Windows.
Okay,
but why
so
do you want me in the presentation mode?
No, you just start. I will guide you, sir. You just make the presentation.
Okay. No, you want me to share first, right? I'm not sharing.
Share the entire screen instead of just PowerPoint.
Okay. Yeah. You want me to share the entire screen? I got that.
Sure.
Now you'll see a whole lot of.
It's okay.
People. Yeah. Is this better?
Yes. Now it is better, sir. Perfectly. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, so visual is clear, and if my voice is clear, I will begin.
Sorry, sir. You can just press that small hide.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you. Did the presentation go away, or are we still good?
Alter tab. Alter tab.
No, I don't have an Alter tab.
ALT button and tab button.
Is this okay?
Just minimize this. Okay. Yeah, fine.
Yeah, is this okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. So all the tech issues out of the way. See, this is a good example of how design actually works or doesn't work, right? Isn't it? Yeah, between various platforms, we still haven't got this whole thing smooth. Yeah? So you move between Zoom, Teams, Google Space, but we still struggle to get our presentations out. And it requires a whole lot of instructions. You saw Suhas sir kind of literally guiding me through each step. I'm going to come to this a little later as to how design works or doesn't work. But let me begin with, first of all, saying a very good evening to all of you all over again. And I'm very happy to be attending this, Learning Next webinar series from Magic, CMI, as well as GGS, Nanded. So thank you, Ashish Garde, thank you, Kshitij Chaudhary, thank you, Shri Mukund Bhogle, and of course, Yogesh Tavade for initially organizing this whole thing, as well as Suhas sir for the briefing about the institute and the lovely facilities there, and the kind introduction, and Rohit Auti sir to actually talk about what's going on at Magic. So thank you all for this warm introduction, and let me get on the way. So since most of you are probably from Aurangabad, and this kind of focuses around Aurangabad in a way, I mean, as an initiative, I must mention that I have a very strong relationship with Aurangabad, having got married in the wonderful city of Aurangabad. And I have been fortunate to have frequently spoken and I have done projects with industries based in Aurangabad. A very long relationship with many industries, including the NIRLIP and the Bhogle Group. So I'm told that the attendees are prominently entrepreneurs, various incubatees, students, as well as faculty. So I'm happy to be speaking today on this subject online, of course, with all of you. Ideally, of course, it would have been really nice to meet you all in person, but maybe we'll leave it for some other day. So someone has said very interestingly that design is a journey of discovery. So today I'm going to share, in brief about my journey as an industrial designer and as a creative leader and as a designpreneur. So I will also cover what I consider as the core engines of design and product design. So I'm going to talk about those. And I'm going to talk about product design as a differentiation tool through very brief stories from my experience as a product designer. And I'm going to share examples, mostly in story form. I don't like to do it any other way. I don't like to do it in tabulation because I think those things they just get lost, but stories stick, right? So I'm going to share examples with you as stories where I've been part of mostly, and some other examples just to reinforce some points. So in total, I'm going to take about 1 hour, 15 minutes, approximately, maybe a little less. And if time permits and interest permits, probably we could follow it up with a good discussion and some questions. So I speak to all of you from probably a city all of you would know, the city of Pune, where I reside and I also work. Now, most of you know this, but like most Indian cities, rural Pune, steps into the urban Pune. So it's very, very, very common to find, on the streets of Pune, a group of children just playing cricket, or buffaloes grazing on the banks of the river, Mula and Mutha. Yeah. That's how our cities are, right? And Pune is also a typical city from that. But this is what really inspires me. This character of our Indian cities, this our culture where things just mingles into each other is what actually inspires me. That the fact that we are steeped in culture, education, technology, history, all at the same time and all working together. So while my working career, which began in 1989, was incubated by the city of Pune, my journey in design began in the city of Ahmedabad. Like Pune or Aurangabad, Ahmedabad is a vibrant, lovely city. It is a hub of craft activities of Gujarat state and has a very, very strong impact on design in India as well as on me. So it was the year 1983 when I began my student journey at this venue, which is the National Institute of Design, where I trained on to become an industrial designer. And much like this strong tree which you see on your screens, in the courtyard, my education was rooted at one end into the cultural fabric of the city and India. And on the other side, it somehow pushed us to branch out and explore the skies that opened out through the portal within the institute's architecture. You can see that courtyard and the tree just, pushing it out. So the institute kind of pushed us to explore much beyond, but at the other end, it kept us rooted. So as a student, I was greatly influenced by my teachers, and I was fortunate to have some exceptional teachers. And I'm sure the students who are there today and the students who have been of the past obviously know what is the importance of a teacher in your life. And the good part was that our teachers played the role of inducing a sense of curiosity. So we were left to discover more or less on our own paths in our own way, and that kind of went on to build a strong confidence in me to tackle any challenge in my design, which the design journey actually threw at me in the years to come. So I was also influenced by this great designer, thinker, and teacher, Victor Papanek. So probably some of you have read this book. If not, I will really recommend you to read this book. His book, Design for the Real World. While the cities of Ahmedabad and Pune and my education as a product designer at NID laid the foundation, it was Victor Papanek who shaped my thinking to constantly look at real world needs and relevance in my design work. My initial projects were an exploration for the underserved. I worked for the Blindsmen Association at a blind school for the blind in Vastrapur in Ahmedabad. And those were the days of transistor radios. So I'm talking about 32 years back. So forgive what you see today on your screen. So I worked on a fixed station, jockeyable station, interface, search interface. And the final product was a pocket-friendly product that was, radio, which was stable to use, convenient to use by people with very poor eyesight. Then I took up another project, and this was with the paraplegic children's school. These were mostly children with polio, affected disabilities. And the idea was to design a trainer or a walker to help them train their alternate muscles. So train the alternate muscles of these children and help them to learn to walk with or without braces. So the idea was to create a product that could be produced in the school's workshop. And the school had very rudimentary facilities. They had a pipe bending machine and some welding equipment. They had a lathe where wood could be turned and a fabric shop. So that became my material palette, and that's how the design kind of I went about the design. The end product was a very simple adjustable walker, more like a toy. It's more like a toy if you look at it, and more like an aspiration of a car or a vehicle. So the big realization which came to me when I saw these children actually use the walker, and I saw that little smile come on their face, was that a little design change can actually place a smile on the face of a child or a person. And this made me realize the power of design. And that's where my intrinsic interest, though I was already studying design, it kind of grew at this point of time. From here on, I of course went on to do training at Tata Motors, which was telco those days, to learn from the industry. I worked with Blue Star on design of various water coolers, air conditioners, and so on. And in that spirit of exploration, I became a design entrepreneur. Elephant is the name of the company. The company I work for was founded on the story of blind people. Probably many of you have heard this story of blind people. And much like the blind men of this Indian village who, while walking through the village, they come across a large object blocking their path. And all of them start touching it and feeling it, and everybody has a very different idea. Somebody says it's a snake, somebody says it's a fan, somebody says it's a wall or a column, and they start discussing and arguing and discussing about what it is, till they together they see the larger picture emerging, the larger picture of the elephant. And Elephant Design, the company I started, is based on this very essentially the same principle, which is about putting together various perspectives. And it is the solution which emerges when various perspectives come together, which is much larger, as a whole than the sum of parts. So that's what the company is all about. So Elephant is a full-fledged design innovation consulting practice. But I will talk about Elephant later and the work later as we go through various projects. But allow me to circle back to Elephant as a solution. So what does it mean to us? This little story we heard about blind people coming across an elephant, right? What does it mean to us? What does this story tell to each one of us? This story actually underlines the importance of co-creation, teamwork. And believe me, any product development process which you might be part of today and which you might be part of tomorrow will only succeed if it is teamwork. And beyond that, it also illustrates the fact that even though our eyes might be closed, we might be blind, we might be blindfolded, and most of the times our eyes are closed, though they are open. Yeah? We need to have the vision to see beyond. And the vision is such an important part of this entire topic of product design and product development, which we are going to discuss today. Yeah? So to understand product design, we must first understand vision. And we must first understand what is design. So if I was to ask you, each one of you, What is design? What would be your answer? Let's begin way back. Yeah, probably all of you are already thinking, right? So let's begin way back. Let's start with Stone Age. Yeah, Stone Age was the, probably the, the time period when man kind of put a stone to a set of sticks or a stick, and a wonderful productivity tool called axe was created. So was this an act of design? Yes, probably. That's what we will say, right? But it's not only about tools. Some of you might know this or might have seen this. About 45 kilometers from Bhopal, there are these Bhimbetka rock shelters, which are about 30,000-year-old cave shelters, and you find these paintings inside. These rock paintings are expressions about the daily hunting life of people. Now, is this design? The tool was probably designed. Is this also design? Yes. Expression, when people express what they feel or they do and put it out in a form, is design. Expression is design. If we move into contemporary times, design even works, even in brands. So many automotive brands have animal expressions, and we probably have seen that, right? So Vauxhall has a griffin, Ferrari has a horse. The Lamborghini logo shows a bull, and that's what is shown on your screens right now. It's a bull or a Taurus. And why so? Because it was the creators, the brand founders, it was his zodiac sign. And Ferruccio Lamborghini was extremely interested in one Spanish sport, which was bullfighting. And that kind of found its way into the logo. And he thought that the products he was building at that point of time, which was tractors and later on, cars and so on, would actually carry the spirit of what the sport was all about. Yeah. So there is history and there is story inside a brand. And it is all encased into that little abstract symbol which we sometimes comes across. And that is by design. So even brands are designed. Even symbolism can be designed, right? I mean, all of us are looking at this picture and saying, hey, what's happening? Yeah, and the picture is telling us something. Yeah, obviously there's a Koki product here, which is displaying powerful symbolism. And what is the context? The context is a slippery surface. Yeah, banana peel, slippery surface, caution, so on, right? So design always has a context. There is always some background which actually leads you to design. It is never without any background. Yeah, and it's not only about products, yeah, or graphical expression, even fabrics, and probably some of you are familiar with this fabric. It's called ikkat. Ikkat is a technique in textile weaving, much like the Paithani, which is found near Aurangabad, near the town of Paithan, and Himru shawls and many other things which are there in around Aurangabad. Ikkat is also a technique of textile weaving. And it's very popular in India. It's popular in the entire Southeast Asia, East Europe, as well as Japan. And it involves creating an intricate pattern by coloring sections of thread and weaving on a loom in a kind of interlace of threads on the horizontal as well as the vertical axis. Yeah? So design is about technique. And design is also about the craft of achieving the end result. So techniques, processes, and skills or crafts, they play a significant role in design. There's the importance of that as far as design is concerned. So any idea what this product is? Probably most of you would have guessed, right? It's an iron. It's an iron from Iron Age, probably 1,000 years back, 1,000 years old. Yeah, it's obviously based on coal. Most of us know this product, right? It's based on coal. It's made from ironworks and wood. Why was it made like this? Because that was the prevalent material available at that point of time. And those were the prevalent technologies which were available a millennium away to people. Yeah. So here's an example from recent times from Philips. Yeah, the context is the same. Ironing clothes, doing away with wrinkles. Yeah. But the advent of new technology and plastics created a new design. Lightweight, non-stick, temperature control, use of electricity. You don't have to light a fire on the coal or deal with smoke. Better functionality, obviously. Yeah, steam control for very hard wrinkles, which can be done away with. Many interesting technology and features were introduced into a simple product like iron, which was invented probably 1,500 years back. Yeah. So technology plays a significant role in driving design. Now, technology is not only about materials. The way people behave or interact leads to a novel design, like this interactive menu panel at a McDonald's outlet. Probably some of us have used it, having eaten at a Mac outlet somewhere. So when we understand any expression and communication, it is designed. So technique, material, craft plays a key role in design. We also understand that technology is a very big influencer in design, and that human behavior drives interaction, and consequently, it affects the final design. So if you look carefully at this picture, we find that everything in this picture is designed. The stool in the corner is designed. So is the person's clothing, the menu which is there on the screen, or the light at the background in the ceiling, or the set of balloons with some happy illustrations on it. All these have been designed for somebody, for some purpose, and hence they have been put here for use. So everything is designed. But that brings us to the key question today. Everything is designed around us. But what should we really consider is that, is it good design? And in order to understand good design, you must understand what is bad design. Yeah, you will say, what is really bad design and what is really good design? Are there two sides to that? No. But we must understand when design doesn't work, right? So probably some of you might have experienced this. And I call it my elevator moment, because this is a moment where I really fail. I usually enter an elevator and I'm usually struggling because I have never found one panel similar to the other panel. And I don't know where number 1 is, I don't know number 8 is, and I'm hunting for whichever floor I want to go. And by the time somebody else has pressed some button and the lift is either on the move or something else, or probably it's not moving nowadays. Yeah. So I used to think that probably something is wrong with me, but probably not. Let me give you another example. This is a shower panel, which I encountered in China. Now, all I wanted to do was to have a warm bath. But instead of that, from music to chilling water, I was treated by all kind of treatment by this device, but I just couldn't get my bath. So obviously the panel is solving some problems by giving you all the features and all the technology it's coming together. But the question to ask is it doing it well? And the problem is not only with products which are hardware driven and in three-dimensional form. It is also found in software interfaces. Like this application from a prominent bank. And if you look at very carefully, it says unlock, somewhere in the middle, it is saying unlock all transactions, unlock domestic transactions, unlock international transactions. And there is a radio button next to it. It is very unclear whether the button is actually unlocking it or locking it. So obviously you are going to make a mistake. And this happens all the time. And look at the message at the bottom, the text at the bottom, which says your request to unblock in international transactions is successfully completed. Now, what will a person understand out of this? So many times we work on, interfaces, we work on products, and we work with a lot of beliefs, but we fail. We fail because it puts the person at, in a very compromised condition where he or she is unable to carry out the functions. It puts, when a product interaction actually adds to your stress, it reduces your efficiency, it confuses you, then the problem has not yet been solved. The solution has not been arrived at, and the design is failing. And that's the clear realization we must have. And that understanding is very essential for us. We must learn to understand when design fails and what doesn't work. Now, problem solving in design obviously leads to a workable solution. Yeah, and good design eventually has to make sense. It has to be easy. It has to be comprehensible and easy to use. It has to reduce stress. And this brings me to my first of the 4 engines, which I'm going to talk about. So 4 engines of differentiation through product design. So design is all about adding that bit of good positive value. And only when you add positive value that you will better the present. Now, new design helps create positive differentiation for design. And that is good design, and that is really good design. Now, as a person who is involved in new product development, which many of you would be involved, or in future you would be involved, we must ask ourselves this one question always. Am I creating value for someone? Am I creating value for someone? And for that, let's look at a few examples. How does value creation or value addition work? And probably many of you know this gentleman. This is Muhammad Saidullah. Now, Muhammad Saidullah comes from East Champaran in Bihar. Probably you have heard of him. He's a famous person. If you Google him, you will find him. Now, he had a very unique concern. To go to work, Saidullah had to wait for a ferry because there was a river, large river next to his village. And the ferry was not very frequent. It would come in once in a while, once in the morning, once in the evening. And in the monsoon, during floods, the ferry would not ply. So that was a big problem. Loss of income, couldn't do his whatever he needed to do by going across the river and so on. Yeah, so it was a big problem. So Saidullah actually created a bike that could ride and also take him across the river. Yeah. Now, this was identified by National Innovation Foundation, and you can figure that out. But because of this bicycle, which could float on the river, he didn't have to wait for a boat or worry about the floodwaters. Now, he manufactured the cycle in about 5,000 rupees. He can manufacture the cycle. And this is a great invention, what Saidullah actually did. And it quite does the job, what it is supposed to do. And he was able to create a design solution, which kind of solved his dilemma. Now, he makes and sells a few such bicycles to others around, and probably does it now as a small business, and has helped others in Champaran also with his solution. However, his good invention, as we see, is limited in impact. Yeah. So how many people has your innovation impacted in social terms? What is the business impact of what you have created? How much livelihood has it generated? Yeah. And what else can happen with your design? This is the thought line for opportunities. Yeah. And problems which we come across, like what Saidullah came across, are opportunities. They are like sunrise. You have to catch the moment. Yeah. If we wait for too long, then we miss them. We miss the sunrise. We miss the opportunity. So, and the most important part here is to exploit the opportunity for the larger benefit and value creation. Yeah. So let us look at 2 examples at this point of time. And allow me to tease you with an example from Hollywood. I like movies. Okay, I love movies. So I'm going to give this example. Probably some of you have seen this movie, if you can guess the name of the movie. But if you can't, from this picture, identify the movie, let me explain this. This is motion picture Joy. The name of the picture is Joy. And it portrays Jennifer Lawrence, who's the actress, as Joy Mangano. Now, Jennifer Lawrence actually is a very famous actress. She has worked on many movies, including the very famous serial Hunger Games. So if you have seen that, you will know Jennifer Lawrence from that. So Jennifer Lawrence plays Joy Mangano as the ingenious inventor and the designer of the magic mop. What is a mop? It's a tool to mop the floor. Clean your house, little dirt on the floor, just use the mop to swipe clean. Very, very simple product, right? Probably has been there for many years. But Joy Mangano is the inventor of the magic mop. Now, based on certain real life incidents, and this is a real story, Joy gets down to solve her problems using design. So she breaks the glass and she hurts herself while trying to clean the mess on the floor. And she cuts her hand and she says that why, and she raises the point in her head that why can't there be a better mop which doesn't end up, making a mess or hurting me or makes my life easy. She's actually growing a small daughter. If you see the film, all this is very clear. And she has many things to do in the house, and just mopping the floor kind of makes her stress. Okay, I'm coming back to the point of stress. Yeah. So Joy focuses on her own self and her ideas, and she creates these very nice, simple sketches to evolve a design, a concept for a new mop that eventually goes on to make the life of millions of users very easy. Yeah. So of course you can see the movie and figure out what the mop does. It's a very easy to use, easy to squeeze, and etc. mop, which she invents. And now today most of us are using this mop. Thanks to COVID and the lockdown, all of us probably got used to using mop in our house. And probably we would be user of her product or a copy of her product, because a lot of things get copied around here. So, that's what Joy went on to create out of, the opportunity which she saw. So it is not only about movies, right? So, I mean, what you see here is actually the real life Joy Mangano. And she actually went on to create history, and she went on, with her products, she went on to become a home shopping network business woman, a mogul of sorts. And a serial entrepreneur. She has about 100 patents. After this one patent which she filed for the mop, she went on to file 99 other patents, and she has created several discoveries, and she's figured opportunities and created value for herself and value for the users of her product. So Joy, if you look at it, she grabbed an opportunity. She just grabbed it. Yeah, she had inside her the core ability, which design and problem solving teaches you, and that is to spot the opportunity where you can intervene, and she did that. So spotting opportunities is the genesis of design and the genesis of problem solving. If your problem itself is not spotted correctly, and that's wrong, chances are that you can spend your lifetime working on it, you will never reach an end goal, right? And like Joy exploited, her opportunity to create a business as well as social value for herself and for millions of users of a product. Now that's value. That's design leading to value. Now, to illustrate this learning about value, let me share with you the story of Symphony Limited. Symphony is an Indian public listed company. Now, I started working as a designer for Symphony, from my design consulting firm, Elephant, many years back. And at that point of time, they were a BIFR case, which means a sick company, and they were referred to the BIFR office, as a sick company. So from here on, the company went on to become the world's largest evaporative cooler company. Today, they are present in four countries and so on, right? The script today trades high at the stock market. So how did this value happen? Now, reaching to the top is not easy. It's never easy for anybody. Was not easy for Symphony also. And staying there is even more difficult. So, the air cooler market today is about 2,000 crores. And 50% of that is unorganized. And 50% of the organized market is Symphony. So they are the leaders, but it's difficult because it's a price war. I mean, if you ever go in the summer season to cities like Hyderabad or Nagpur or even Aurangabad, especially Delhi, you'll see mountains of coolers, mountains literally, just put together, copies, just, jugaads of sorts, kind of just put together and selling for dirt price. So there's a big price war. So regardless of how good products you produce, you will always be fighting a price war. So how do you build value, right? So we were always wondering while designing for Symphony as to why don't we get value for the product? So what we did was we started going to the streets and to people's homes, talking to people. Now coolers are bulky products, right? And we need space in the house to house them. And that's what we figured out. And people were always, and we found our own products, pushed out into the balconies. People were drying clothes on it. People had pushed the product under something, and we would ask them, what is the problem? And they would say, nahin, space kam hai, we have less space in the house. And that was usually the answer what we got. And this got us thinking that why are people talking about the coolers? We are talking to them about coolers and they are talking about space. And let me remind you of this, very interesting Javed Akhtar, book of poems, and it's called Tarkash. If you've read it, it's great. If not, please do. And there's a poem inside which begins, and it's the title also of the poem, which says, "Har ghar mein ek kamra kam hai." In each house, there is one room less. Isn't that what happens with each one of us? Regardless of how small or how big our house is, we still fall short of space. That one little space which we need for doing that one additional thing, right? Har ghar mein ek kamra kam hai. So this little insight, which began by looking at the latent needs of people, which people were not talking about. They were not saying that I need something, but this was their behavior, and we looked at it and say, hey, this is something happening, and can we address this problem? We thought this latent need being expressed by people was an opportunity to design. And that's the genesis of design, which happened from here, and genesis of creating value. So we took up what we called ourselves a 1 square foot challenge, to fit a cooler into a tile of 1 feet by 1 feet. So we re-engineered the entire cooler to throw this, probably better quality of air than the earlier products. And today, and that's how this range called Diet was born. Diet now sells across, probably we have sold more than 1 million coolers today, and it sells across in 70 countries, not just in India, but across the world, 70 countries across. So it actually set the benchmark, and it actually got, people were able to find the product which met their expectations. It went on to create a category for itself. Every manufacturer of its worth started copying this, and today it's much copied, not just in India, but also in China, Middle East, and so on. And that's the success of the product. That's the success of that one insight, which led us to create this value for Symphony as well as for a whole lot of other people. Yeah, but we didn't stop there, So it went on because people were copying. We said, let's create more value, and we introduced a product which could cool better because of 3-dimensional collection of air. Yeah, and we called it the Diet 3D, which was a very contemporary model, and to stay ahead of the competition. Now, this relationship with Symphony has been for almost 31 years. And as I said, when the company started, it was sick. And from there on, to become the world's largest evaporative cooler company across four countries around the world, where they have offices and manufacturing facilities, it's a very big move. And today, probably, I would say all the coolers which you see in the range from the company Symphony have been designed by us. Now, that's the value it brings to you as a designer. And that's the value eventually it reflects onto the company. So as designers, we always complain that we are not part of business decisions at board level and so on. Yeah? And when we bring value to the table, the business leaders are more than willing to provide you a seat at the board table. So in 2017, I was invited and appointed as an independent director on the board of directors of Symphony Limited. It's today, as a public listed company, its market cap is almost 7,500 crores plus. Yeah. So there is a place for design at the maximum decision level, making level, provided as designers, we continue to add value to the business. So it doesn't matter what technology you're working on, doesn't matter what design you're working on, what problem you're solving. If you are not able to raise the value for the users, for all the stakeholders, you will not make it anywhere. Yeah, so that's the importance of value. And how? So we continued adding value. So we said that, okay, we've saved the customer space. What else can we do? So we said, if you looked at air coolers, they also get fitted into the windows. And how many windows does a house have? Maybe 4, maybe 5, maybe 6. Yeah, that's about 20 to 25% of the windows in your house, which is being occupied by a cooler. And what does the cooler do? It blocks your fresh air when the cooler is not in use, and it blocks visibility outside. If your world is outside and you can't see it from there. So we said, can we save not just the floor space, but also free the window, for the customer? And that's how Cloud was born. So Cloud is as the world's first wall-mounted cooler with a lot of innovations inside, which are able to draw the water as well as fill it and forget it and let the cooler run, almost like an air conditioner mounted on the wall, but running at probably 1/10 or maybe more of the power power consumption, and running on water, evaporative cooling. So that is the power of design. And recently we went on ahead to figure out that industrial units cannot afford air conditioning, right? And so there's this demand, and there was a demand for a very robust modular ductable air cooling system. So we expanded the entire commercial and industrial cooling range. And so see how the value is getting added. So you're thinking, you're figuring out market segments, you're figuring out the needs of the customer, and you're improving, the value which the company can get and provide to the customers. So this opened out a completely new business segment for coolers, and we were able to make industrial installations into decent functional cooling spaces, like what you see here. Yeah. And even the coolers got installed in COVID hospitals, and suddenly the COVID hospitals were also appearing smart and clean. Fresh air coming in, clean air coming in, and cool air coming inside. Right. So this platform of industrial coolers is very easy to install. It's robust, it's flexible, and it can be easily deployed by the trade. So the design was focused on what the trade wants and how they are able to deploy it, and how they are able to bring value to their customers. Right? So again, the word value comes into how you design. So again, coming back to the fact that one does begin the exercise by spotting an opportunity. So it began that day when we figured out that if you focus on the customer, in some people's home, and you focus on actually what the problems they are facing, and you try to solve it, that's where the value creation begins. But what really matters is what you do with it. Once you spot the opportunity, what do you do with it? So successful exploitation by spotting these opportunities and making a positive and valuable difference is the first engine for good product design. Yeah. So this brings me to my second engine, which kind of focuses on people. Now, when we zero on the expectations of people, your users, your customers, stakeholders, we are able to create solutions which they add value. We saw it in the earlier engine. Right? But most often in product design, this part kind of gets missed. This part of focusing on people, this gets overlooked due to inherent biases which we have. Now we are too strong. We have created a technology. We are too focused on that. Now that we stop thinking what the people are going to do. The problem which I faced when I was trying to share my presentation, I'm sure Google has figured it out, right? They have great technology working behind. But people like me fail to share smoothly a presentation. Professor Suhas had to guide me through, this. So this is what is happening. These are biases. Your technology overruns, the people expectations, and that's where problems start happening. Yeah. So let's look at a few stories. How product design teams have been tackling across. Probably some of you identify this product, right? It's very clear. Apparently, it's a multi-purpose tool of sorts. Yeah, the brand is Leatherman. Now, Tim Leatherman was an American, and one day he decided to go on a road trip in Europe, driving a Fiat. He wanted to just drive around and see the countryside and so on. Now, his car broke down on the way, And somehow he was carrying a screwdriver and something, and he managed to somehow make his way and repair the car and get it working and finished his trip. But this little misfortune, which Tim Leatherman kind of underwent on the way, got him thinking that people need specific tools for specific jobs. Now, if you need to repair an automobile, you need automotive specific tools. If you're an electrician, the tool set is different. If you're a carpenter, the tool set is different, and so on. Now, this focus is not on a general tool set, rather a trade-focused tool set that got him started and got him to start this successful company and brand called Leatherman, which supplies trade-specific multi-purpose tool. Now, all of us know other brands, especially of the Swiss make, which are general-purpose tools. Many of us probably carry it on a day-to-day basis. But his proposition and opportunity, which he spotted, was very different. That people need very specific tools to solve specific problems, right? So today, Leatherman has even tools for surgeons. It has tools for doctors and many other trades what you can think of. Now, that is the power of focusing on specific people and their very specific expectations. Now, let us look at another similar example of Fiskars, the scissor maker. Yeah. Now, Fiskars figured very early in the 60s, though it's a 300-year-old company making cast iron scissors, but in the 60s they figured that the bulk of their customers were seamstresses or tailors. Yeah. Now, what do seamstresses do? They cut fabric in various patterns, but they do it for long stretches. It's not like what we do once in a while, we take a paper and cut it. They're cutting fabric for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Now, what happens to your hands when you do that? Yeah, obviously, it makes misery of your hands and fingers and all that. So this was something, an opportunity. This was an insight which Fiskars focused on, and they focused on the fact that their target audience is not people who just once in a while do a little scissor cut, but people from the clothing and fashion business, and they focused on that. And based on that, Fiskars innovated on human ergonomics. They innovated on materials, even the angle of the cut, which allows you to cut a fabric properly and efficiently, to design a range of scissors. Today, Fiskars makes billions of scissors across the world and sell across the world. Actually, it comes from a very small country called Finland. Okay, it doesn't have the population to support billion scissors, but they sell all over the world. This is the maximum copied scissor today. So all the other equivalent scissors which you see have been copied from what Fiskars has done all this while. And the product designers and the product development team which worked at Fiskars were not tailors. They did not know tailoring, but they focused their attention on what their consumers wanted and what their consumers expected. And that was the reason for their success. Now let's take another example, look at another example from the world of children. Now, this second example is from the world of education. How do you teach children to code? Now, that's a very regular problem today. If you talk to any parent today, and in today's parent generation is a little paranoid parent generation that the parents, probably me or some of us had. And I am to blame also. I am also one of the paranoid parents. And as the generation, the millennials are now becoming parents, they are even more paranoid about what their children should learn. And suddenly this word code has kind of come into the lexicon of and the pedagogy of what the children should probably learn. So how do you teach children to code, or about Internet of Things, or about new technology? Now, there are two kinds of children, right? There are some who are very, very scientific oriented. They're always tinkering with something, probably they are into electronics. They are always playing with gadgets. They're called the nerdy types. I don't mean to demean them, but that's what they are. That's what they're called sometimes as a slang. But there are the others, the non-nerdy types, who probably don't like to do all these things. They are probably into some other things, literature, maybe something else, art, and so on. But then if everybody needs to understand technology today, how do they do it? How do they go about it? Now, we all know that children never learn from studying books, right? As much as they learn from reading stories or from plays. And children have very vivid imagination. I mean, you give them a ball and a broomstick and they will fly like Harry Potter. That's what is there in this picture. So when children play, it is unhindered. They try to emulate their parents, they emulate their siblings. You give them a shoebox, they'll convert it into a house or a doll house or something like that, or probably a microwave oven. And they exactly try to see how behave, how they have seen probably their mother behave or their father or their sibling behave. So when you are solving a design problem, it is important to listen to and feel what your user wants. In this case, what children want. You're not them. As a designer, you're not a child, so you don't understand what's going on in the mind of a child and how they apply their playful minds. If you went and spoke to the parents will tell you, no, teach my child how to code. Let him sit in front of a computer. Let him understand whatever, C++, Python, any of those languages. They're very militant about it. But you want to go to the child, he wants to play or she wants to play. They want to build their dollhouse. They want to behave like the Iron Man or something like that. Yeah, they want to run their electric train across and go on a journey across the mountains. That's what the children want to do. So how do you get them to apply this and as well as at the same time learn? This kind of led us to design Plezmo. Yeah, so what is Plezmo? Let's try and understand through this short film. Let me see if I can play this. Just tell me if it is. All right. So Plezmo is a play set that allows the child to learning. And we saw that. So tomorrow you want to make a dollhouse. See how the imagination now goes. Everybody plays with a dollhouse. And I'm going to use the term dollhouse because I don't want to make it gender specific. Everybody plays. Boys play with dollhouses. Girls play with dollhouses. Everybody plays. And you imagine a doll approaching your favorite doll, and the door opens and she goes inside, or he goes inside and sits in the living room and so on. And imagine now the doll approaches and the door opens by itself. The lights come on, but you have to make it work for people the way people want it to work, and make it work in a relatable framework of solutions. And the answer lies in these three words: focus on people. When you focus on people, and when we match their mental model, is when we make product design actually work. So, this kind of brings me to the third engine, which is about differentiation in the differentiation through product design. As humans, we are emotional beings, and we relate to objects beyond function. So function is one thing. We understand things have to work, but we relate to them a little beyond that. Yeah, it's about delight. It's about empathy. It's about love. We love, we hate, we feel, we sense, we desire things. Yeah. We kind of love symmetry. We love balance. We love proportions. Yeah. We love the sculptural value of a form. Incidentally, this object here, which you see, is a juicer. You can actually cut a lime in half and squeeze on the top. It very, very nicely, elegantly flows the juice down into a glass, which can be put below this juicer. It was designed by a very interesting designer called Philip Stark. So there is a value, there's a desire value sometimes which gets created in a form. There's a sense of beauty which kind of comes associated with certain products. And you feel like owning them, you feel like having them, you feel like using them. So as humans, we also react to color or texture or light. Like in modern airlines, and we have seen that all of us have probably taken a flight someday or the other. And the airlines nowadays change light to depending on the kind of conditions which are outside. So it's morning or evening. And especially if you're flying from one country to another across time zones, then it kind of helps you to overcome the issues of moving between time zones. And light is used as a mood creator. Yeah. So we adore human-like reactions. We develop attachments. For example, Sony Aibo, this lovely little dog. You kind of get attached to that, and it's a product. And people develop emotions towards even inanimate objects. And most important is that we connect to stories. As humans, as people with emotions, we love stories. And let's take a good example. Yeah. So if I were to ask you, what did you do, or what did you love doing as children? What would be your answer? Especially in the month of what we just saw, monsoons and so on. Yeah. So we would splash around in puddles. We would make little paper boats and float them down streams. Yeah. So Paperboat is a brand that was born out of such a simple memory. Probably many of you have experienced this brand. Probably many of you might have consumed this brand. Yeah. But it kind of came out of this concept that we all have, as children, we have memories, and we have memories of various things we did, like making Paperboat, but we also have memories about our grandmother made some drink or juices, and now no longer those are available because we are far moved away. We are no longer joint families. We are nuclear. We are staying in different cities for work and education and other reasons, right? So it came out of this concept as a product which is completely based on drinks, which are very nascent to your culture, to your background you come from. If you remember, there's a very interesting Jagjit Singh's ghazal, "Wo kagaz ki kashti, wo barish ka pani," which is about memories, right? So the brand was basically born out of that Paperboat. And when we began to work with this team, which was a startup, Hector Beverages, they were all of 4 people, in a small bungalow in Delhi, Gurgaon, and a dog. And the name of the dog was Hector. That's how the name of the company, Hector Beverages. So Paperboat is a memory drink product, which is completely based on the value which the design actually brings across. Now, whether it is the hold-friendly grip of and the feel of the shape, the illustrations which kind of remind you of certain times, or simply the easy-to-open cap, all that is design coming to play in that one product. And that is what actually has worked for this brand. And even the illustration style has drawn from the Indian ethos of how things happen. And they relate to eventually the product which you are going to consume inside. And the product is not a Pepsi or a Coke or a cola, but something which you have consumed as a child in your house, made by your favorite mother, aunt, or your grandmother or your mother. So these memories and these stories are very popular, and they find their way on the pack and the drinks as illustrations. And the success of these memory foods in the memory food space has helped the brand to expand to other food products, including hard food products like chikkis and laddus and things like that. And in a very limited short span, Paperboat has risen to the top to be one of the top 10 buzziest brands. So this was in about 2 or 3 years of time that Paperboat found itself as a startup, making its way and giving some of the well-established beverage players a run for their money. Yeah. So and why did that happen? It happened because of the design focusing on the emotional quotient what people have, the connections which people make, the stories which people believe in. And when your design doesn't do that, people don't treat it with the value. Yeah, people don't get attached with it. People don't get connected with it. So design and business leadership for enterprises is a good example what we are seeing here of early dovetailing design and product design into the development of the entire product portfolio and business. And good product design ensures a good return on investment in terms of design. Yeah. So that kind of brings me to the last section, the fourth engine, which is about responsible impact. Yeah, how design can lead to ensure responsible impact. But let me just do a quick time check. How are we doing in terms of time, Suhas sir or Kshitij?
So we can.
Yeah,
sorry,
you can finish. Yes.
Okay.
We can go on. Yeah.
Yeah, we can go on. We can wrap it up.
15 minutes or so. Yeah. Okay.
10 minutes.
All right. All right. So as a person who's involved in product development, it is essential to look at what one is achieving, yeah, all the time. And the question we must always ask ourselves is, what am I doing? What am I doing? Is it making any difference? And if yes, to how many? Is it to one person? Is it to 100 people? Is it to 1,000 people? Is it to 1,000,000 people? And then the follow-up question we must ask ourselves is, how are we doing it? This is a very, I love this example and I give it always. It's a product, probably all of us know that, right? Because some of us might have used it, being of the electoral age, voting age. So it's designed by, it's the electronic voting machine. It's designed by IIT Industrial Design Center, Powai. And it's a revolution because it has eased and they didn't do it alone. They did it along with Bharat Electronics Limited. And so it has eased the volume of storage, consumption of paper, bogus voting, and reduced time to vote for people. And the results are out in a matter of hours. So what else do you want, right? And this something, I'm talking about 2014 onwards, and it kind of fully got established. And 2008 was the first time it got prototyped and used in the largest general elections at that point of time. So before this, obviously, people used to cast votes, and people cast their votes from urban and remote corners of India, across right now about something like 93,000 polling stations. And the general elections at that point of time used to consume more than something like 8,000 to 9,000 tons of paper. which is about 200,000, equivalent to about 200,000 trees. And this used to take days and days of laborious counting. It used to take a lot of space to, store all these boxes and a lot of bogus voting practices. But this system is easily portable. It takes less space to store, easy to use, makes the voting process quicker, and the results are available in a matter of, as I said, a few hours. So the communication and the interface is highly simple. And the algorithms, make sure that it is foolproof against erroneous voting and even frustrates bogus voting attempts. So this is a very effective example of how sensible design can have a great impact on common people. This is colossal, okay? So design has the strength actually to reach out to billions. Now think about it, each one of us, each one of you out there, you are all going to be in some way connected to product development. You can actually do work which can impact billions of people. Okay, that's the power I'm talking about. Yeah. So this is good design at play, and this is not easy to achieve. And of course, even this machine took a while to perfect, but through a lot of prototyping and trial at various selections, and one by one, it kind of got perfected and then released, right? But that's how design is. And as the British designer, late Sir Terence Conran says, and I quote, that good design is probably 98% common sense, and above all, the objects must function well and efficiently, and getting that part requires a good deal of time and attention. So what are the key principles of product design to help achieve good and efficient design, to put that into place, right? So next time you kind of, each one of us takes up on any design program, please apply this 4-point checklist of key priority or key principles. Are we seeing from the people point of view, our consumers' view, our users of applications and products? And most important is to spot those opportunities by providing solutions with empathy towards people, relatable solutions, yeah, with empathy towards people, towards earth, towards things around, and so on, culture, and so on. And the most important point of spotting opportunities is to provide solutions, yeah, which kind of offer positive value as is expected by the consumer. Does she connect with your solution? Does he connect with your solution? So the next two steps are very critical, yeah, which I'm going to cover in the next example, is to prototype. And we saw it, even the voting machine didn't happen in one day. It was prototyped over years and perfected. Prototype, which means test, improve, repeat. Prototype, test, improve, repeat. And that kind of has to go on ad nauseum till kind of you are able to get a successful solution for your people. So at this point, let's look at one example from the healthcare space. So stroke is the top 3 causes for disease and death in India, as well as globally. Yeah? And worldwide, over 6 million people die of stroke. So stroke is a medical emergency. I mean, some of you understand what stroke is, and probably, and I hope not that if nobody near and dear has actually felt this, but it's an emergency which happens when the blood supply kind of gets restricted or stops to a part of your brain. And because it affects a part of the brain, it kind of affects many other parts of your body. But the worst is this, that each year, 15 million people suffer stroke worldwide. And if you look at the people who pass away, it's very sad, but they're gone. But the people who are living, for them, it's a major cause of long-term disability and compromised life. Physiotherapy, dependent on others, and so on. Yeah. Now, up till now, generally it was believed that our brain is actually confined to the skull. It's kind of hardwired, and external stimulation is required to heal it. And that's been the theory, and that's why rehabilitation. So when the stroke patient undergoes some bit of medical, intervention, and then a physiotherapist is usually, given. And what they do is rehabilitation happens through highly repetitive exercises, which are usually physiotherapist led, and they are very manual and very robotic in nature. Right? But the new shift in the way the thinking is that the brain is forever plastic. Yeah? It's self-learning, and it's not embodied just within the skull. It kind of goes to the rest of the body. It's beyond the skull. And the rehabilitation can be based on low repetitions. It can be patient-led. And if you get the brain and the muscle to train as one system, which is what this company called Symphony actually developed. And the Symphony was like many of the incubates today, they were incubated in Singapore at the NTU. And they developed this technology to create a correlation between the brain's signals emanating from the brain and your muscle movement. And if you track that, the patients were able to see their progress and eventually train some other part of the brain to learn and get some of the movements which they had lost or functions which they had lost back. So that was the technology. Now, when this technology actually appeared, yeah, it was actually a bundle of wires, and that's actually the first time when we saw the product. This is how this product was. It was working. It was working at a lab level, but this is how it was. So a good technology, but completely not relatable to patients. And when you started looking at patients who were undergoing therapy using this technology, we saw that they were traumatized. See, they already had gone through a traumatic situation of having undergone a stroke and just recovered out of that. And then suddenly, you had a skull cap with wires coming, a computer hanging somewhere, and trying to do that. So the technology would work. However, the patients were not having the patience to actually go through this whole thing. So, a traumatized patient will usually take about 15-20 minutes to wear this technology. And by the time the patient starts doing even one, session, the patient would get tired. So that was a trauma of the patient. And based on that, as a process, as a design process, you start exploring, creative as well as iterative ideas, and start exploring them in the form of sketches. And then you start building up very simple, quick, early to fail prototypes to figure out if things are working at all, to weed out solutions which will not work and which probably have some potential to work. And the response and feedback which comes from these, which is required early from all stakeholders, including the manufacturer, manufacturing, the business, the service people, as well as most important from the patients. So many times, as people in technology, we tend to look at the end solution. We start looking at the end elephant and stop wondering if there could be parts. And many times you need to prototype in parts. Many times you need to prototype quick and dirty so that you don't end up spending a lot of effort and energy and resources before you actually figured out that what you thought it probably was not the right path and the idea has failed. Yeah, so you try very quick solutions and see if they're working at all. And that kind of led us to to create a set of prototypes, and you start testing it on patients, and then you figure out that one size does not fit all. Yeah, there is our human skull is not the same. So if you have a device which kind of sits as a on top of people's head, then you figure out that people have different kind of heads. Some have larger heads, some have contoured heads, and so on. Yeah, and then there is a problem of the elderly. Probably some of us have seen grandparents, or some of us have seen these kind of skins. The skins are soft, and any sensors touching the skin, you end up with sores or some other issues. And this is with people who don't have hair, and the people who have hair, especially let's say elderly patient with long hair, a device like this can easily get caught into the hair and cause even further trauma. So this is something you only figure out as you start developing these prototypes and testing. So testing and feedback becomes a very important way to keep developing your design back. And believe me, this is not testing in the lab. This is testing with real people in real situations. And many times you kind of go back to the drawing board. So in this case, we figured that we didn't have the data. We didn't have the Asian data for the head size. We didn't have the Caucasian data for the head size or the arm size and so on. And and the design team at this point stepped back and started looking at how to gather the data. So we had to go back to our basic anthropometrics and start measuring people, across India as well as in other parts of the world to get the data. And from there on, it kind of led us to reach a solution which was easy to wear, easy to deploy, even single-handedly, today, over 5,000 patients have undergone tests, and about 450 have shown positive recoveries from plateaued level. When I say plateaued level, it means that for 4 or 5 years, despite physiotherapy and other interventions, they had not shown improvement. That is what Symphony, this product, has been able to achieve. So simple, enjoyable exercises that train your body and muscle, and most importantly, they build your confidence back. Because once your confidence comes back that you can do a certain set of things, it gives the patient a big slice of dignity and life back into their world. And that's something they always remember. They want to get the dignity and respect back into their life. So even the interface which has been designed for you to interact is very simple to understand. It's very easy on the eyes, because you don't want to, you're dealing with a trauma patient. It offers you choice. What do you want to do today? Do you want to train your fingers? Do you want to train your thumb? Do you want to do your wrist or your elbow, and so on? And it also gives you, a little a game to play with. So you can choose a character you want to train with. For example, your favorite monkey or a koala or a panda or whatever, some other character which you like. And it kind of helps you in a very playful manner understand whether you are actually reaching your goals for that exercise or that session or not. Yeah. What this did is this entire exercise did is it basically reduced the trauma on the patient, made it very simple and easy for them to understand and deal with this product. Yeah. So this is a good example of responsible impact using technology and designing to work together. And product design has been helping people with different disabilities. This product has been used by guitarists to improve their strumming. It has been used by athletes to train better. It has been used by hypertension patients to reduce their hypertension, and also dyslexic children. And what you see probably is an example of somebody who had a child who had a very poor handwriting, and in about 15-16 days, using this technology and design, they were able to achieve. She was able to achieve a much better handwriting output. So her motor skills improved using this. So many spin-offs actually come out of good design, good product design, and good technology, provided it has gone through a good sense of development. This product, of course, has been tested at several institutions, and just proves that done well, design has the potential to impact the lives of millions across the world. And there is enough to be done in this world, let me tell you. And if you focus on real problems, the problems that need our design intervention, then that's where we need to go. So this kind of brings me to the last part, which is of the fourth engine, which I want to talk to you today, is about consumption. So why do we consume, and what do we consume? And the third question is, how do we consume, and how much do we consume? Yeah, these are very important questions for design, for anybody in the field of product design, whether it is about the social, ecological impact of our actions or otherwise. Yeah. So as a designer, it is that constant ghost, for me especially, of Victor Papanek on my head, which is trying to get me back to the real world. Yeah? So where am I? I'm always asking myself, where am I focusing my design energies? Yeah? So you're looking at this picture, and this picture might look like a wannabe cast from the popular serial Game of Thrones, but it is not. These are actually members of an organization called Plastic Whale. And it's an organization which is devoted to freeing canals of Amsterdam from plastic waste. And what you see at the bottom at their feet is a whole lot of rubbish which they have collected from the canals of Amsterdam. And what they do at Plastic Whale is very interesting. They have managed to motivate about 22,000 people to act as fishermen. And they fish whenever they have the time. They come together and they fish up till now they have fished about 2 million bottles and other plastic waste from the canals. But they didn't stop there. They have used this to create a material from which even these boats have been fabricated. And so they use that basic material which came off the canals to itself to make a mobility solution which will help more people to go and fish for the waste and trash from the canals. And they also produce other products like acoustic panels and furniture and so on, right? So that's the power. That's the power which we can do if we start being responsible as a designer. And closer home, this is not only in Amsterdam, and closer home here in Pune itself, you can find two organizations. One is called Ecokari and other is called Rechakra. And they're doing something equally amazing. These organizations are collecting plastic wrappers and cleaning them and sorting them and slitting them and then weaving them into threads on a charkha and producing woven fabric. And this fabric is being used to produce lifestyle products like bags and so on, right? So it's a start, and many other organizations are doing this. How does your product which you're designing fit into this ecosystem? That's a question you always have to think. And in the last year itself, some 20 billion pounds of plastic has entered our rivers. Yeah, nothing wrong with plastics, but it's important to take back. It shouldn't find its way into rivers and seas or landfills. Yeah, it has to find its way back into use, that it repurposed for people. Yeah, so there is so much which exists already, right? So, and how can that be repurposed? How can that be recycled and reused? So if you visit ever a studio, and that's why I'm showing you this picture, you'll find these repurposed, Apple Macintosh CPU towers. Now, they are very nice towers where the CPU earlier was there. And one by one, we have consumed the entire electronics which is inside to kind of, update our equipment or repairs and so on. And then the only thing remaining was the outer aluminum casing. And we have used that to create benches. Just one example. There could be many of repurposing. Why throw something when you can repurpose that into something very interesting? So good design, yeah, and successful problem solving eventually go on to also improve and enhance the quality of life, yeah, and help in creating wealth and health for many people. Yeah, that's the underlying, the take out of this fourth engine. And as designers, we have to learn to ask if we are adding to the problems or are we solving problems? Yeah, many times we end up adding to the problems. We saw it in some of the case studies, yeah, earlier. So that's our responsibility. And that's my biggest message today to all of you, that you will design. You're great engineers. You're good designers. You will eventually become great business people. You will design. But will you design with responsibility? Will you design to produce good products which are relevant to people? And that's our responsibility at the end of the day. To summarize, just to summarize in the end, we looked at what design is and what makes good design. I highlighted the 4 engines of product design. Design as a value creator. Design can succeed only if it is always people-centered. And we need to design with empathy, with love, to produce delight, to create delight for people. And we have to design for responsible impact in numbers, in relevance of the opportunity area, and eventually, what it does to us and the environment around. We cannot neglect that. Yeah? So remember one thing, that good design is good ROI. If you designed it well, if you spotted the opportunity well, if you have done the right things, then eventually design plays for you towards the end. Yeah. So design is not something which is something which needs to come as an afterthought. Many times design is taken as an afterthought. Let me design the technology. Let me put out some proof of concept. Let me put out a product, and then we will see. We will kind of shape it better. We will just dress it up better. That is not design. Design needs to start from the word go. You need to start focusing on people from the word go. Technology can run its parallel course, but design has to start with the word go. Yeah. So start early, not as an afterthought, and make the solutions work through detail, through material, through human factors, early prototyping, usability testing, and improving and repeating it again till you kind of come through with success. So in the end, I'm going to leave you with this lovely thought that resonates, with what we have been speaking. To do good differentiated product design, most important is not how smart you are, but how you think. With that, I thank you for being patient through the glitches and otherwise. And I'll be happy to stop sharing. And if there is any time, we can take questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashish sir. That was really a great session.
Yes, yes.
So,
actually, it so happened to me at least that it should not end. Okay, because I found so many things resonating with my mind, my thoughts throughout the years. So thank you, Ashish sir. Yes, Kshitij, you can take over.
Yogesh, you want to add on?
yes. So thanks, Ashish sir. Any questions from our participants? You can directly unmute yourself and ask questions to sir.
Shetty sir, you want to ask something?
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Deshpande sir, session was really very, very nice.
Sir, can you just come closer to your mic because you're not audible?
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yeah,
your
can
voice
hear
is
you.
very weak, but yeah, you go ahead with the question. We'll try and pick it up.
Okay, sir. Now it may be audible, sir. Sir, you have talked about the studio. What is the studio, sir? Design studio.
So you are asking, I talked about a studio. What is a studio? I think when I talked about the studio, I was referring to the design studio. That is where the design actually takes place. I was referring to my consulting studio where the design team actually sits. So studio is when I said come visit the studio, it is basically our office. We call it a studio because we create things. Yeah. So you can call it a lab. You can call it a studio. These are all points of creation. These are all different ways of calling things. For some reason, and you are rightly to point this out, that engineering is never an engineering studio. It could be a drafting studio or a CAD studio, but it's never an engineering studio. Engineering is always a lab. But design is also like that. Design is called a studio. But design could be a lab or engineering could be a studio. It doesn't matter. It's what you call it.
We can proceed with the both of us.
Yes, Mantarga sir.
Yes, I'm there.
Thank you.
Ashish sir, I was wonderstruck. I have no words to express thanks to you. We shall
Thank you
be
so much.
Eternally, because so many dimensions you opened up for all of us. I think our students will benefit a lot. And to digest also, it will take a lot of time. Thanks that Suhas has recorded it, and I think you will permit him to make this lecture available to all our students.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Master. Now I will just finish my job. We thank Magic and CMIA for associating with us. Ashish Gardeji, Rohit ji. We thank our director Yashwant Joshi ji. Today's in-charge director is Holambe sir. All of they have helped us in organizing this program. And at the last minute, we spread the message to the students and our heads of the department and deans. They all have joined in this program. I think that they got one of the best programs that we have seen in this academic years. So we thank you all, sir. And we thank all the students. I think they will spread the message of this program because we have got the Idea Lab and NIST policy is in place by Government of India, and engineering institutes are supposed to be the incubators. And your lecture was so helpful to the students to think in that direction. Sir, we expect some more lectures from you to guide our students. Thank you all.
I'll be happy to. So Ramchandra sir and Suhas sir, I have a suggestion for you. Please don't mind, but I thought let me just give out this suggestion. You
Yes,
have
sir.
so many labs. You talked about robotic lab and so on. I'm sure you can carve out a little space and create a human factors lab.
Yes,
It's
Okay,
important to create a human factors lab where students will understand human and not just as anthropometry and as physical dimensions, but also on the emotive side, on the
yes,
emotional
sir.
side.
Sir, we will
Understanding
make
mind
that
as
as a
well as
lab in our idea laboratory, and we
okay,
will take
great
your
idea.
help.
I mean, then I'm very happy for you. Very happy that you are setting that up, because the thing that usually it is an afterthought. It should never be an afterthought. It should be dovetailed into students' thinking. It should be dovetailed into all our thinking right from the start. We have to
Yes,
think
sir.
people.
Sir, we will definitely try with your
Sir,
help.
we will be in touch with you, and that will be part of our idea lab. I promise you that we will do it, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
only
Inspiring
that,
for me also.
sir, the last example which you took of
Yes, sir.
EEG, I am the coordinator, and Professor Manthalkar sir is a co-coordinator of a project, research project based on EEG only.
Right.
So we are working here. There are 4 or 5 students, PhD students working on EEG, and the design which you have shown, it resonated with the equipment which we are already using, wireless EEG capture, and
Yes.
we can definitely correlate with what is the problem, what are the problems which you have spelled out, etc. It was really wonderful, sir. Starting from the Stone Age to the finally the futuristic product kind of Magic Broom, and then
True.
coming back to life with live examples, and finally the EEG and human touch. Wonderful, sir. I mean, since long I have not been present to such a wonderful lecture, sir. And these are not just words to flatter you, sir.
No, thank you. I understand that. So for EEG, I would suggest please do look at Symphony. Symphony is an acronym. So SYNPHNE. That's how the name of the company goes. It's right now, it's as I said, it's incubated in Singapore. It's got several now funding grants, and many people have now funded this because the technology is really going to help people.
Yes.
So a lot of work is also going to happen in this field. And this project was actually a start project, just to see that, you know, can it work for improving, let's say, the limb, the upper limb of a patient. But then many other things were discovered. Now many other body parts are actually coming into play using EEG signals. So that technology.
We'll connect you offline, sir. Definitely regarding.
Yeah. So I think please go through that, and if you want to connect with the company, I'll be happy to connect you.
Sure, sir. We would.
Sir, one more thing, sir. We are interested. I, along with Suhas, we are interested in developing interventions where the student will be able to learn better.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there also we will need your help, sir.
Sure. Happy
you.
to help on any of those counts. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ashish sir.
Thank you.
It was our pleasure that you were present for today. You have spared some time, and I know how busy your schedule are. Thank you, Suhas sir. Thank you, the CAS team, my team. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you
you,
all.
Rohit sir and Ashish.
Thank you all. Have a good evening, and I'll take leave then.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashish Garde sir and Rohit Auti sir also. Yeah.
Yes, Rohit Auti sir, as well as Kshitij and Ashish Gadri, please accept my thanks. See you sometime soon. Thank you so much.